Whatto chaps, I'm Magical Mike, and this is a Renegade healing build, specifically for fractals, tier 4 pugging mainly, or if you want to put it into your static group you can absolutely do that. Potentially could be used in raids, but, well, I'm not the guy to talk about that. Now, first of all, I know that someone out there is immediately going to say, hey Mike, but we don't need a healer in tier 4 fractals. You just play the Chrono, and you take maximum DPS and just blow everything up. And to that, I say correct, yes, you don't need a healer in tier 4 fractals. However, I've been pugging with this build for about 2 weeks now on and off stream, and I can quite safely say that most pugs, every pug asks for a Druid, and this can absolutely replace that Druid, but most pugs kinda need the healer. And you, my friend, can be that role. So, how do we replace a Druid, I hear you asking? Well, let's have a look at the build. First of all, gear. We're looking at Harrier gear. So we're power, healing power, concentration. Alright, that's the armour, that's the trinkets as well. And if you're struggling to get Harrier gear on your trinkets, you can get these things in the fractals. So if you've got a load of pristine relics lying around, easy stuff. For the weapons, you want berserker weapons, simply because you're going to massively overcap on your boon duration in the fractals, because you're going to have fractal potions on, you're going to be at like 80-90%, and if you use a sigil of concentration, you'll be even higher than that, so we're going to go with berserker weapons, simply because you're most likely going to have berserker weapons already for your revenant anyway, so we're just saving a bit of money here. Berserker sword, berserker staff, and you probably have a second berserker sword as well here, but honestly I never swapped these because camping staff is the name of the game. However, take swords in case you need to DPS properly. Right, sigils, probably force and air in your swords, honestly it doesn't really matter that much. And in the staff, you want the sigil transference because your outgoing healing goes up by quite a lot. And for the cheaper people among us, like myself, Sigil of Water is just fine for more healing, or if you want to go big DPS, big boons, big lad, then take the Sigil of Concentration if you've got 30 gold lying around to spare. Quick note here, because I forgot while I was recording, food you want to take exactly the same as what the Druid would take, probably. Delicious rice balls and bountiful maintenance oils. Or like quality maintenance oil if you can't afford it. Now the Sigil Concentration increases your outgoing boon duration for I think 9 seconds after you weapon swap. And you're not really going to be weapon swapping on this build every 9 seconds, but you are going to be legend swapping, which does the exact same thing. It does trigger the Sigil Concentration. So, there you go. Runes, I've gone with altruism runes, and there's a good reason for this. You get healing, you get boon duration, you gain fury, and you gain more might. Now the might isn't very interesting, who cares about that, but the fury, you get 5 seconds of fury on a 10-second cooldown whenever you use a heal skill. Not a big deal, right? Your heal skill's on a 30-second cooldown. But we're a Renegade, we're a Revenant, we've got 2 heal skills, and one of them is on a 3-second cooldown. Oh, now you're seeing. We suddenly get all these boons just from using this every few seconds. Look at that. We've almost got maximum fury. Almost. In fractals this will stay up permanently. There's a couple of seconds downtime here with even just 62% boon duration. Anyway, altruism runes. Easy to get, cheap on the trading post. Right, so the build. In we go. Now there are variations to this, but the one I'm quite happy with at the moment is Salvation, Invocation, and, of course, Renegade. In Salvation, we have this, which does really nothing. Occasionally you'll blind some stuff. You also gain a little bit of toughness, but you gain some more healing power, so that's nice. And you gain this minor, which means that your natural harmony skill grants a little bit of alacrity, which, that's pretty handy. A Druid can't give alacrity, can it? No, it can't. But that's interesting. It also increases more healing, so that's a pretty strong skill all of a sudden. Right, then you take Tranquil Balance, which increases your healing potential as long as you're topped off. You take Tranquil Benediction because I like to camp staff, and it means the orbs that you spew out whenever you're auto-attacking now grant regen and swiftness, keeping those boons up nice and high, as long as people are in melee with you and picking them up. And I take Selfless Amplification, which means just a flat mega more healing power, which is pretty good. Now if you want to, you can take Invoking Harmony if you want to weapon swap off cooldown, or if you want to Legend swap off cooldown, which will improve your healing for a short time, as long as you're using it constantly, but I prefer to just camp staff. You can also take Nourishing Roots, which means that standing near the tablet will just give you permanent regen, but flat healing is quite a bit stronger, so I'm going with that. Skipping over Invocation for now and into Renegade, we get this, which basically just means that you gain Cowler's Fervour every time you hit something while you're flanking it, because you're not going to be critting all that often. You gain Fury, which is whatever because your heal skill also grants you Fury, and while at full endurance, increase your chance to critically strike and gain Vigour whenever you gain Fury, which is supposed to interact with this skill, but actually interacts with the Altruism runes. So easy peasy Fury, and easy peasy Vigour, which means you're going to be much more survivable because you can dodge roll more often. Cool. Now here we take Raw Iron Will, which gives you retaliation and regen, also grants those to nearby allies, so that's fine. It's just that the other options aren't particularly useful here. These aren't particularly useful either. Obviously this interacts with Shortbow, which we don't have, so we don't take it. And this is like, who cares, right? Who cares? And we take All for One, which means that your Renegade abilities, all of these guys, suddenly pulse Protection, which is pretty strong, considering they're quite cheap, and they increase survivability in a large area, as we can see over here. Standing in here, give me plenty of protection, and it pulses, too. Or it doesn't pulse, but the healing pulses, anyway. I was wrong. Now here is where options open up. At the moment I have Lasting Legacy on. This trait alone is where we can replace a Druid using Celestial Avatar skills. We all know that we take Druids into fractals and everywhere else to pump out massive amounts of might. And, I mean, we can do that at the press of one button, F2 here, as long as you have 5 stacks of your Fervour, which you gain by hitting stuff in the flanks, you can pump out 15 stacks of might every 10 seconds. And you can use that off cooldown, constantly. Which means that while you have massive boon duration, you can effectively pump out 30 stacks of permanent might. Easy. However, if you don't happen to have a Chrono, but you have other sources of might in the team, you can take Righteous Rebel, which will increase your efficacy of Orders from Above, granting you, see it right there, alacrity, plenty of alacrity in fact. With this trait, Righteous Rebel, this skill becomes ridiculous. If I just show you the tiny radius on it without the trait, it's very small, it lasts, you know, a few seconds, you get a fair bit of it, it helps recharge itself faster, you know, nice. Let's just use the mushroom there, and put the trait on, and what's this? Oh, it like doubles in size. And what's this? Ooh, up to 9 or 10 seconds of alacrity? What's that? Is that going to recharge in time? I think it might do. Well, with the boon duration in fractals, it absolutely will do. So, very strong trait. This is your choice. This is the only major choice you have to make whenever you're joining a fractal and you see a Chrono. If you don't trust that they can pump out the alacrity, then take this. If you don't trust the rest of the team or somebody to pump out might, then take this. But this is the default option. Alacrity is nice, but you can get it elsewhere, as you can see over here. Right? So, Invocation is the final trait line that I'm going to take, and I take it specifically for Charged Mists, which is really quite strong. I'll talk about that in a second. You can change this for Devastation if you just want straight more DPS and just take the standard raid stuff in Devastation to improve your sword attacks and improve ferocity for allies, but we're talking about this for now. So you can gain Fury whenever you swap legends, which then procs with this trait here to give you Vigour as well, as if you didn't have enough of it. While you have Fury, you deal additional damage, but it's not a big deal because you're not doing a whole lot of damage anyway. And your legend swap is now a stun break, which can be handy for fixing a few mistakes here and there. Here we take Forceful Persistence, which means that you deal a little bit more damage when you have an upkeep skill, which you will do if you're using Soulcleave Summit, which is the main meat of the build. We take Spirit Boon for a few more bits of boons, and there's not really much else to it, because the options here are not particularly good. Obviously we don't need more might, and we don't need more healing and swiftness, because we've got plenty. And now the main reason we take Invocation in the first place is Charged Mists. We gain 25 more energy whenever we swap legends when we're below 10, which means that if you want to keep up Soulcleave Summit for as long as possible, which you do by the way, from Ventari you can blow the tablet up, which using this skill will give me to 0 energy, and then immediately swap back into Renegade stance and you'll have 75, which means that you can keep all that delicious lifesteal up for much, much longer. Glorious stuff. So how do you use the build and what's the point of it? First of all, why would you take this over a Druid? Well, really just for flavour, but there's plenty of stuff that it can do, and it's mostly revolving around Ventari and Kala skills, but you can change Kala for Jalis if you need more stability, although it's questionable. So let's talk skills. First of all, moving the tablet will heal anything that it passes through. Also, when you're near the tablet, it will pulse healing every 3 seconds, and it's not too bad either. In fact, if we go wandering in here, and just sit in this, you see that we get a tiny, tiny amount of healing, but if we pass it through us, it's like 1,000. It's okay. It's reasonable healing. We have our Q, which is an incredibly handy skill. It'll put up this bubble, which is a light field, and it destroys all projectiles that try to enter it. Which, as you can imagine in fractals, is incredibly handy in many, many situations, which I'll put on screen at various points over the video so that you can see. For example, if you want to do the volcanic fractal, the final boss spawns loads of ads that constantly mobilise you with projectiles. Well, you can just delete that mechanic with this bubble. The uncategorized fractal also spawns all the harpies, which have tons of projectiles which threaten to knock you off the platforms, which you can just totally ignore, and they can't even do any damage to you anymore. And climbing up the stairs as if it wasn't already easy is an absolute joke with this mechanic. You just put the bubble up and sit in it, and laugh as none of those projectiles can hit you. Also, if that wasn't enough to sell you, Snowblind, you can just place it on top of the ice elemental, and none of the bonfires ever go out. Ever. Put it up there, light all the bonfires, kill it immediately, move on. Even the Chrono doesn't even have to change skills, which means more DPS. Everyone's happy. We also have the Molten Furnace fractal, which basically the entire last section is just a giant mass of projectiles, which you can just put the bubble up and ignore. Forever. You just sit in it. It takes no energy to do so. Easy. We also have the main big heal of the build, which is Natural Harmony. It applies alacrity to allies, and it'll heal for roughly about 3k to 5k in some cases. If we just come over here and take some damage, we'll just wait until we get some DPS. If we're struggling for health at any point, we just press E. We just press this skill, and you can spam it quite a lot, and you can see already, we're healing for like 3.4k. It's huge. And as long as you're above 90% health and you're healing somebody else, you'll heal for even more than that. It's phenomenally strong. And of course, we have Purifying Essence, which removes a bunch of conditions on a 5-second cooldown. Not bad for things like My Trin. Speaking of My Trin, and the bubble, if we need more condition removal, our staff has this, which blasts in here for area cleanse conditions and removes conditions on its own already, and is an extra heal, in case we didn't already need more. But our auto attacks are whirl finishers, which means if you just stick the bubble up on My Trin and keep smacking her in the face with your staff, everybody's conditions will just disappear. You could argue that a Druid is much stronger at removing conditions more effectively than this, and I would probably agree, but the fact is, we still have that option too. And finally, the Ventari Elite. In a pinch, it will do a knockback, which is pretty handy, but After a short delay, the tablet blows up, and it spawns these things which will heal you, or anyone else that decides to walk into them. And you can kind of spam that too, you just resummon the tablet, blow it up, resummon the tablet, blow it up. You can see it's pretty easy. You can understand why there was a troll build in PvP at one point that just did this. Remember, this is a knockback though, so be aware of that. Now, in Kala, we have a bunch of fairly useless skills. We have this guy, Razorclaw's Rage, which improves condition damage. Not really somebody that you will summon almost ever, really. Just kind of ignore it, unless you really need the protection, but honestly, not worth summoning. We have, of course, our heal, which is a very large heal over time, actually. If people sit in this, they will constantly heal for between 1 to 2k per second. It's honestly really strong. If your team is somehow still dying and you're stuck in Kala, don't be afraid to dump this guy on top of them to try and save their lives. We also have Ice Razor's Ire, which is sort of useful in some cases. In the Volcanic Fractal, for example, he will throw bolts and cripple enemies, so he'll cripple the Grawl that run towards the Shaman, and you can use this in the Deepstone Fractal, for example, to slow down the fires that move towards the final boss. It's not particularly good. So if we spawn a Golem, with Ice Razor's Ire, the one thing that Ice Razor's Ire is particularly good for is sticking it behind an enemy, and as it hits stuff, it will give you stacks of Kala's Fervor, which in turn you can press F2, and boom, there's your 15 stacks of Might. And you can keep this up out of combat too. You know, with your boon duration, you can keep this up. You can keep your 5 stacks, you just spam F2 and you'll keep it up, nice and handy. So after some fiddling around with this Golem, because this test console is awful and I don't know how to use it properly, let's talk Dark Razor's Daring. He does a bit of protection, as does everything else. Bit of stability for yourself, not a big deal. Break stun if you really need it, but he's expensive if you want to do that, and it's generally better to swap stances instead. But the major thing that you can do is sort of what Druids are particularly good at, and it's mass CC. If you place him anywhere near this guy, I can almost guarantee that this break bar is just going to disappear. So let's just dump him nearby, make sure he's in the radius, and you know, over time this break bar is just going to delete. It's pretty good. Also, these daisies, they're only tiny little daisies, they're not a big deal, but in fractals like the Urban Battleground, where there's tons and tons of mobs just constantly harassing you, you can dump this guy down over and over again, and just remove how dangerous those mobs are in the first place. Like I said, it's a lot of what Druid is good at too. You have that ability, you really do. Another thing that he's particularly good at is in the Shattered Observatory Fractal in the mid-boss, where she splits into 4 or 5 different places into each of the corners in the middle, and you have to break the break bars in each one. If your team isn't particularly good at splitting up properly, you can actually handle 2 of those on your own. Staff 5 is a massive break bar destructo skill that you can just use and delete a break bar pretty much whenever. And Dark Razor's Daring you can shove down, and it's a fire and forget skill. You can just dump him down and leave, and it will delete a break bar from one of those Viastara mini boss elements on its own, without you even being there. And as I just said, Staff 5 is great at deleting break bars too. As you can see, easy breaks, and that's about the strength of most break bars in fractals. If we're talking like the Chaos Fractal with the Gladiator, he's absolutely terrifying if he pulls you in and his break bar doesn't get broken, but you know, you can just save Staff 5 for it, and you can cover that mechanic easily. If we're talking something harder like Bloomhunger, you can save Staff 5 and Dark Razor's Daring, and then break bars are a thing of the past. That is, of course, if your team can't help you with break bars for whatever reason, but they should be able to. And now, the main reason we take Kala is for Soulcleave's Summit. This is a fire field, in case anybody does want to blast it for whatever reason, if you need more might somehow, or if you're just blast finishing things for whatever reason. But you see there, it does life siphon damage and healing. This is a big group DPS increase, and it's massive lifesteal for everybody too. So while you're stuck in quotes, in Kala, you can shove this guy down, this lady down, and do so much for your team without them even realising it. As long as they're stood within its radius and attacking, they will heal themselves massively. Let me just demonstrate that for a second. So this is dealing some minor damage, like 700 damage a second. So let's just do this, and auto attack. Oh, look at all these heals. And since I'm auto attacking and I'm putting orbs out, I can walk into these orbs that are all coming out in melee. They give me swiftness, regen, they do flat heals, I'm doing whirl finishes for burning bolts. I'm able to keep this up forever because I was in combat. Oh no, she stopped. Let's just bring her back out. Look at this, the time you can keep this up is huge. It's ridiculous. So now we're below 10% energy, we're going to legend swap, come out with massive amounts of energy, just spam our skills a little bit. Oh no, we need some more healing. What if we need some more healing? What if we need some more healing? You get the picture, right? And as soon as Kala is off cooldown, you can put the tablet somewhere, blow it up, switch into Kala, 75 energy, boom, instantly back into the elite, doing tons more damage for the team. And you got these Ventari bits and bobs lying around as well, in case you still need those. And I should be at 25 mic constantly too. So you see the rotation's very, very simple actually. There's not a lot to it. You're mostly just auto-attacking, keeping up these two buffs, ignore Citadel Bombardment, there's nothing to it. Keeping these up, blowing the tablet up whenever you need to dump energy to keep your Invocation tree up. And look at all this, it's ridiculous the amount of utility that you get here. You also, on Staff 3, have a block. So if you really need to block some mechanics like in the Nightmare Fractal, you can do that too. It's an incredibly strong set of skills here. But something else that I haven't touched on that is incredibly important, it's almost a hidden mechanic with the build, is that these skills here are all instant cast skills. All of them, apart from your energy expulsion. So, I can be doing literally anything, and I can move the tablet. I can move the tablet and cast Natural Harmony at the same time, and you'll see when it explodes, because it's on a delay, it heals. So if you're predicting somebody moving to a place, and you need to heal them right now, you can move the tablet, and it heals immediately when it gets there. This does require a bit of prediction, so you need to know where people are going to be, so there is a level of skill involved, but it means that you don't need to be anywhere near them. You don't need to be stood on top of them. If you've got a pug that is just running around randomly and getting themselves seriously hurt, you can do this, you can put a bubble on them, you can follow them around with that bubble, you can remove all their conditions, you can follow them even further, you can heal them massively, you can run into the bubble, do massive cleanses, you can do whirl finishes in the bubble to have even more cleanses. You get the idea, right? If somebody goes down, you can revive that person and still control the tablet. You can be doing any mechanic. I can be fiddling with this arena console, for example, and the rest of my team could be over there, taking damage from the golem, and I can still be healing them. This is something that Druid can't do, and while it takes a lot more finesse on this build to do it, you can see that the strength is really kind of hidden, but massively strong. Until you've actually played with this yourself and really gotten used to moving the tablet around, it's really hard to really appreciate how much this does for you. But hopefully you've been able to see some of the clips of fractals going on in the background, where I can just throw the tablet around and just permanently be healing people while dealing with completely different mechanics elsewhere. It is massive. And Kala can do the same as well. You can place these skills basically wherever you like. You can dump them all over the place. So if somebody does decide to move out of one of your skills, you can put another one down instead, and you can Venn diagram them and cross them over, and you just stack them up. It's so strong. I'm not saying this is better than a Druid. In fact, if anything, they're about the same. But I'm a strong advocate for how strong this build can be. If you're willing to put the time and effort into learning this, and you just feel like playing something other than a Druid, go ahead and give this a shot. It's a lot stronger than you might think. And don't forget, you're still pumping out alacrity on orders from above, from your natural harmony. You're pumping out permanent alacrity, even without the trait, and massive amounts of might. You should easily, as long as your team is stacking on you, have permanent 25 might, and you give them fury, and you give them vigor. It's just ridiculous. Regen from the staff bolts. I could gush about this build for a very long time, but this video has gone on far too long. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I've demonstrated what this build can do in this video, and I hope that you're willing to give this a shot for yourself. If you are, then tell me how it goes in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Magical Mike, and I will see you guys next time.